Hello everyone! After that wild game against between Stockfish and Komodo, it's time to go back to some human-on-human action, and we are back at the Banter Blitz Cup on Chess 24 in a game between Magnus Carlsen versus Sanan Sjugirov, his old nemesis, it is to him that Carlsen lost one of his suffered one of his first defeats of his chess career. If you haven't seen that game, I will put a link to it in the description below. It will be the first thing you see if you want to check that out. But it's the semifinals, and we are going to see who proceeds to the finals. So Magnus, with the white pieces, opens with e4, and they've played 9 games in this match, and it was really hard to decide which game to show, but I think you'll understand why I chose this one. So e5, we have knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. Magnus goes for the Italian opening. We have bishop to c5, and now, of course, you could play a lot of things here. One of the ideas is also you could go for b4, the Evans gambit, and it is exactly what Magnus played in this game. So, as of move 4, the Evans gambit is on the board, and of course Sjugirov accepts the challenge. Bishop captures on b4, we have c3, and now, as we mentioned in the previous video where it was played, the most usual retreats are a5 and d7, d6 somewhat rarer, c5 is a bad idea, and here we have bishop to e7. A long time ago, I think I've read this is the Hungarian way of defending against the Evans gambit, but I could be wrong. But okay, d4, grabbing the center, as you should do when you go for the Evans gambit, and now knight a5, the idea, combined with bishop to e7, now threatening to remove the bishop from c4, but also white could just go for captures, and allow black this freeing d5 move, which is definitely okay for black. So Magnus instead decides to keep the tension, bishop to e2, and now there are actually games in the database where d6 or e captures on d4 was played, but here we have d5. It's a really crazy idea. It's not a new move, but you can see that already the position is just exploding. Magnus goes for queen to a4 with check. We have c6 blocking, and now just pawn captures on e5. And now there is one game where d captures on e4 was played, but here we have b5, and it is as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. So Magnus retreats, queen to c2. Maybe it was better to capture the pawn right away, maybe then b5, as now the queen is already guarding the e4 pawn. And also black has some issues on how to develop the knight and castle to safety, as the bishop prevents it from being developed to e7, pawn guards f6, so you might go knight to h6. But probably best is to capture, go bishop to c5, and then develop the knight via the e7 square. But here Sjugirov decides to go for knight to h6, checking if Magnus is interested in giving up the bishop pair, which he does, so he busts open the king's position. Here on the king's side, we have g captures on h6, and now just knight b to d2, asking black, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep your king in the center? Do you want to castle? Do you want to maybe develop some pieces on the queen side and castle queen side? And first bishop to e6. We have castles by Magnus, not worried about ideas like rook to g8, as he feels confident that he will be able to defend this, but also the black king is still in the center of the board, so it's not black who will be attacking in this game. But okay, here Sjugirov just castles as well, and now knight to d4, just improving the position of the knight. Also knight to f5 might be an idea in the future. So queen to c7, developing, putting more defense on the c6 pawn, and also preparing to capture on e5. So f4, just defending, and now d captures on e4, which allows Magnus to improve the position of his knight. Knight captures here on e4, and here it's a very tough position to play as black. Your king's position is a bit ruined. You do have the bishop pair, although you have to make them fully operational. Until then, they're not really all that impressive. And here you should go for something like king h8, bring the rook to g8, maybe double up on the g file and play that game. But here Sjugirov played c5 instead, attacks the knight, and it's a bit of a weird move as it gives up the b5 pawn. So here Carlsen accepts it, not with that knight. He's not Wilson the Hustler. We have knight captures on b5, attacking the queen, and now queen to c6. attacking both of the knights, even though the knights are defended, but puts pressure. And now we have knight to d6, just an excellent square for the knight, and now f5, trying to kick away this knight, and then you're going to win back your pawn. For example, captures, and the queen will capture on d6. However, Magnus finds the very interesting knight to g3 move here. And the problem is black's queen and rook are on this diagonal, and the bishop to f3 will cause a lot of problems. So here, black goes for bishop captures on d6, but now an in-between move, bishop to f3, a nice Zwischenzug, saying that, okay, now if you move, I'm just going to capture and then recapture on d6, or if you block, which is what happened in the game, bishop captures on d5, queen captures, and then now rook a to d1, again putting more pressure here, so you don't have to so you don't have to give up your pawn back. We have queen back to f7, and only now rook captures on d6, keeping the e5 pawn intact. We have knight to c4 now, puts pressure on Carlsen's rook, and also with some ideas of knight to e3 to get this fork in there. So rook to f6, attacking the queen, queen to d7, and then now comes queen to e2, not allowing knight to e3 to go for the fork. Rook captures on f6, pawn captures now with the doubled f pawn, but also it's a very strong passed pawn. We have knight to d6, hoping to get rook to e8 in, followed by knight to e4 to get this outpost for the knight, but here of course Carlsen prevents it. We have rook to d1, and now rook to d8. Adding more defenders there, but now Carlsen just played queen to e7, and it was in this position that Sanan and Sjugirov resigned the game, and yet another victory in the Evans Gambit for world champion Magnus Carlsen. So here you resign because, well, if you decline the trade, let's say queen c6, then it's queen g7 mate. If you accept the queen trade, captures, you're just lost because, well, you either guard the queening square and then you lose the knight, or you try and guard both. Let's say the knight covers the queening square, but now just you bring a queen into the game, captures, and you are down a whole rook. Other than that, not really much to do. You could just ignore the queen move and play something totally, let's say c4, but then it's just f7 check, and you get another queen into the game, check, and it's just mated this way. So really nothing to do after queen to e7. Here Sjugirov resigned, and like I said, an excellent victory for Magnus Carlsen in the Evans Gambit. And that's only one of the games. The match ended 9-0 in Carlsen's favor, so it was really just a Fischer-esque performance, if you will. Carlsen proceeds to the final of the Banter Blitz Cup, and he awaits will it be Narayanan or Alireza Firouzja who will join him in the finals. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, do check out Carlsen versus Sjugirov, the game I've mentioned in the beginning of the video. First thing you see in the description below. I would like to thank Don Crawford, Marco Pannenborg, Kara McLean-Burke, Paul Weinberg, and Andrea Rogers for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.